We're going to go ahead and call the January 3rd, 2023 Finance and Policy Committee meeting to order. We're starting just a couple minutes late. This team was on the road and there's traffic and weather, and so we're going to slow play it for a little bit to give our minute to get here. Members present are myself, Michael Reynolds, Ms. Diane Kuznar currently, and our finance chair, our finance director is not present tonight, but Mr. Duncan will, our new city administrator, will fill in for her. First order is call to order. Second item is public comment. Do we have any members of the public press who would like to speak to this meeting beforehand?
No one online, sir. No, sir.
Easy enough. Next item is going to be the reading and approval of minutes. These are for December 5th. Right here on this minute.
I will make a motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. I have a motion to approve as submitted. I'll second that motion. Any discussion on it? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimous for those present. Our next item is going to be reporting communications from Mr. Seth Duncan. First up.
Yes, sir. Just a couple. Yes, sir. Just a couple items for tonight. First, just want to remind the body and also the council members present as well that Friday at 9:30 in the morning, we'll have our goal setting session here at City Hall in the upstairs conference room. We will also, so we'll be working with Jeff Shacker from the Municipal Association on that session. And then also as a reminder, an email was sent out last week regarding Hometown Legislative Action Day, which will take place on the first Tuesday in February. And so if anyone's interested in attending that, please let us know as soon as possible so we can go ahead and get hopefully a hotel reservation in the host hotel. And we're planning a legislative reception that evening with our delegation members in conjunction with some of our neighboring municipalities. So we're excited about that. Other than that, our finance director is not here this evening. She's on her last day of her vacation. So we'll welcome her back tomorrow. But from a budgetary standpoint, things seem to be right on track for what we're expecting. Come January, February, March is when we start seeing our big influx of property tax revenue. So you'll see that beginning to uptick and hopefully surpass our projections for this year. Other than that, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, sir. Turn on mic on now, so we won't start the whole meeting over.
Please don't.
Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Do we have any questions for our city administrator? Ms. Abercrombie assured me while she was on vacation, the city was in great financial shape and it would survive her short absence. So, okay, hearing none. Mr. Mark Putnam, our HR director.
Chairman Reynolds, Ms. Kuzlar. I just want to make you aware of a couple of things. The comp and class study is on target to finish for the ends of January so that we can begin looking at recommendations there for the upcoming budget. If there's any need there. Also, we've been working with the department heads on their manning request for the upcoming budget and also doing a 3- and a 5-year plan as to what we're looking at as far as manning. That's where we are.
Mr. Putnam, that's a short sentence, but something I sincerely appreciate as the city grows is just looking and not just looking what we're going to do 1 year to the next, but thinking 3 and 5 and 10 years down the road. So manpower is the same as capital expenditures. It's something planned that's thoughtful and intentional about. So I appreciate that you're leading the department heads in that way. We have any questions from Mr. Putnam? Okay, your overall experience with the comp and class plan thus far?
Really, I was asked that this morning. My things are my thing right now is I'm kind of going into it with an open mind, so that I'm not disappointed or shocked one way or the other. I think that there will be some adjustments that we're going to have to take a look at in some of our classes, and but we'll have a little bit better handle of that in the near future.
Okay, and if you'll remind me, when was that scheduled to wrap up? When? The comp class and scheduled to wrap up when?
Toward the end of January, and we hope to have it with council February.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Okay, next item is unfinished business, which we have none. Following items going to be with safety mission statement resolution. Mr. Duncan, or Mr. Duncan, who would like to take this? Can you just give us some background, please?
What you have in front of you is a safety resolution for the city from council. Safety is and should be our paramount first responsibility of our employees and everything we do. And this document just outlines the way council would like for the city to know how important safety is. It starts from the top and works down. I thought we had done it in 218, but we had not. So we want to make sure we get this in front now that we have a new council group and get this approved and get it signed. So we would like for you to take a look at it and hopefully put that in front of full council for vote and resolution.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Button. Ms. Kuzma, do you have any thoughts or comments on what was presented? So I'd like to. Hold on. I hear it clicking and clapping, so. Maybe someone else would.
I didn't see anything, to answer your question, I didn't see anything in here that I was concerned with. I agree. Calm down, Ms. King,
He's right, just long enough.
we're about wrapping up.
Okay, so. I didn't see anything either, but fairly straightforward, with no other comments.
Well, then at this time, I'll make a motion to forward this to full council for approval and resolution on this safety resolution.
I second that motion.
Ms. King, for the record, has never been in, second the motion. Ms. King is seconding the motion that was on the floor. Any other discussion for this? Ms. King, this was on the safety resolution. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the presented motion, say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimous support for council recommendation of approval as submitted. Okay. Easy enough. That was actually all the business that this committee has before us this evening. We have another item here for public comment. Hearing and seeing none. What do I hear on committee concerns? Thank you, Ms. Kuzma. Ms. King, do you have any concerns besides traffic, weather, and leaves?
Happy New Year, glad to be here.
Very good. Okay. Next item is adjournment. Go ahead.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
This committee stands adjourned. It's 6:11.
How are you?
That normally doesn't happen, but.
That's okay. He did
I
wait.
come in
He
with
was
a bang.
waiting.
Well, I sent him a text.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take these upstairs. There's pizza upstairs.
Yeah.
I got veggie.
Oh, there you go. We do rec. Okay. All right. Switch. Oh, I totally failed on this part. Let's see. Where am I going here? Rec.
Okay. We will call the second committee meeting to order, which is the Recreation Committee meeting. All three members are present, including myself, Mr. Matthew, and Mr. Reynolds.
Just one.
First off is public comments. Do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we will move on to reading and approval of the minutes. Hopefully you had a chance to look at those.
Move for approval submitted.
I hear a move for approval. Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Up next, we have Recreation Director Bart Tumlinger with budget review.
Thank you, Mr. Council. Budget's in good standing. I want to thank Public Works Department today, over the holidays. We had a couple of things broke at our locker room door. It's a magnet goes up there, it broke, and so we're in the process of getting that fixed. Also, we had a basketball goal, couple, got messed up over the weekend. We got 41 teams, that many folks, that stuff's gonna happen, so we're gonna do a better job of our staff moving the goals up and down. I don't think Public Works Department for coming today, doing that because we start basketball tonight. We got 41 teams in our basketball program, we're playing every night of the week, we're utilizing all 3 facilities. I use 3 facilities because we have 2 double gyms at the sports center and the senior center as well, using that gym. Couple of CIP projects that we're working on, the fencing project, y'all approved last month, we started that project. Seth signed the contract with that, with council approval, January 31st. Been working with Seeger's Fence on that, they'll do the locates and make sure they don't cut any wires. And I'll be getting with Matthew about the service gates and the roll through gates, just to make sure it'll work for his staff. Also, we're working on getting prices on the cameras at the sports center and at the senior center. Also working on our new vehicles. We're having time getting some vehicles just because of the state contract. It's a little bit different now, so I think we've got a pinpoint on one, and we're going to try our best to get another one as well. And those vehicles will be used for the rec staff and the sports center staff as well when we get that second vehicle. Sports center's got survival of the fittest. Ms. Kuznar joined today to do that, so wish her well on that. So we'll be starting that soon. And spring sports signups are going on now for baseball, softball, lacrosse, and flag football as well. And I'll have open day party coming up, like for with the council, if you could make it, be out there for those activities. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions? Yes.
Mr. Trumbull, you talked about getting quotes for cameras at the sports center and the senior center. And I know that the Public Works is going to be dealing with an item to look at access control of facilities at the parks. Have we investigated cameras at the parks to monitor those facilities with considering the vandalism that's gone on?
We have Council Mackey, and we just didn't have enough money in the CIP. They were more expensive than we thought. And so what we're going to try to do is maybe during the budget process this year is work with Matthew, work department, and get those cameras out there to those similar parks. So, the vandalism that went on at the sports center is inside the bathroom, so it's just hard to catch. And it's just kids. What it does is catch that lock, and they're going in there trying to just get in those lock. We're just being curious and banging on it. It's years and years of doing that. So, but yes, to answer your question, we are trying to get some prices up on doing that.
Thanks, sir.
I did want to add, and I'm sorry, on our budget process, we're working also, staff, myself, I've been getting some prices up on getting new equipment. So y'all will be aware, some of that equipment has been there since the building was open. And now we've got new ellipticals, new treadmills, we've got a couple treadmills that are original, some free weights, and all the stuff is original stuff that we put in there. Over time, that stuff is breaking. And all the stuff is held up pretty good because it was handmade. It was made out of Houston, Texas. I flew out there and looked at that equipment. That company has since gone out of business. And so we were looking, that was one of the council's main objectives is getting some new equipment in there. And so me and the staff are going to Columbia to look at some new equipment. Sports center staff, myself, Amanda, and Willie, we'll try to go down to Columbia one day next week or two, and go look at that as well. I forgot to add that, and that's it, sorry.
And that's for purchase?
Well, we've got in the CIP to do it way I had it in the CIP last year. And just, budget constraints, we took that out. We're either looking at it that way, or, we'll just have to contract service and lease the equipment. We're looking at both ways. It's very expensive.
Have you done a cost analysis of which one is the better option?
Personally, I think you ought to probably lease it, just from the upfront of the money that you're going to put out. It's going to be easier on the city to lease it out. And that's something we can put in our, we could put in the capital. Again, we did that last year, and it's just a lot of money. And so, so we have a contract services that we're talking about putting in this year. We're getting prices up on that right now. And so we got it both, whichever one we pull it from. I'm just kind of giving the finance department and the council, hey, these are two options to take out of CIP or leasing equipment. The stuff that's breaking is, the building's been there since '07, and it's just, we're slowly getting the members back. It's busy right now, just because of basketball, but members are coming in, and so to keep up with the latest and greatest, we've got to invest in getting us, eventually getting some equipment in there. We've been very lucky for it to hold up, and it's done a good job.
And to go back to fixing things, the basketball goals, that wasn't an act of vandalism, right? Or was it?
Well,
Dunking and hanging on?
with younger kids, I'd say your 13 or 14-year-old kids see it lowered and they'll go by and dump it, and you say something to them, because we lower, like right now, they're lowered for a 6 o'clock game, 8 foot, so a kid's going to show little brother he can go dunk it, and after a matter of time, one of the backboards was completely twisted, and so Matthew's guys hanging and then straighten it back up today. It's just over time of that, folks doing that stuff. So those goals are also original. They're also manually driven. A lot of gyms now, they have a key mechanism to get them up and down. That's something else we're looking at as well. It's just threaded rod, it goes up in there. Matthew and his guys again last week came, or 2 weeks ago, and Matthew himself took the thing out. It's just wear, because you're going up and down with it, every night of the week.
Any other, yes, Mr. Madden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. See, you brought up an extra item, so that gave me another question. Talking about the replacement of the equipment at the sports center, I know that has come up with some of your predecessors, and council has talked about the need for replacement. When this equipment is replaced and you get the new equipment in, whether it's lease purchase or lease purchase, will that start being rotated in and out on a planned life cycle schedule, so that you're not having to go in and buy equipment all at once, and that it can be that continual and gradual phase in and out?
All right, I think I understand the question. I think the line on the lease is, I think 3 to 5 years to lease the equipment and rotate that equipment out. I don't know about leasing all of it. The free weights, actually, the free weights are really in pretty good shape, but they do need to be replaced as well. And so, if that's answering the question.
Really, it was more about, will there be a life cycle replacement, so that you know what needs to be replaced when, and you're not having to do everything at one time?
Yes.
Cool, thank you.
I would also imagine that some of the items could be then moved to the senior center.
Correct. And that's what we do now with the treadmill. You have to be careful with that, because some of those gears on those treadmills, those things got thousands of miles on it. And so, something you just have to make sure it's good and safe before you take it to the senior center. But we have done that before. Next question. Yes, sir.
Any other questions regarding Mr. Conlon's report? Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Chairman. So I think you mentioned it a second ago. What do we normally see those lease terms run? 3 to 5 years? That's normally what we should expect.
That's correct. And I'll have all that stuff out to work when we go and talk with the guy and just see, get a ballpark and have that for y'all. I'm gonna have that for you for next meeting.
As a percentage of the equipment there, how much do you anticipate replacing? Are we talking 80% of the equipment out there, 20%?
80.
Okay.
We could get by with probably the ellipticals, they're fairly new. Some of the treadmills, we got 2 or 3 that are fairly new. The biggest thing is that all the stuff going around that block, that's the original stuff. It was handmade, hand welded. Guy did an awesome job, but it was just time, you got a lot of people banging that way out there, so. That's just something that, if we're trying to sell that sports center, that's just one of the things, one of the keys that we need to kind of stay up, and equipment's changed as well.
That's what I was getting at as well, was, the ability to change what you want. I mean, because the technology's changed, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
Interest to Jones, but I assume it's changed in 15 years.
Yes, yes, sir.
That's all I have, Chairman. Thank you.
We don't have any unfinished business, we move right into new business. So you might as well just stay right where you are.
Okay.
I briefly spoke with Mr. Duncan, or Chair, or City Administrator, about the agenda for this evening. And really, I think what you're looking for is feedback and direction for how we can take these 2 items that are on the agenda and have you figure out what needs to be done next before this ever goes back to full council. As you may recall, we did send this first item of the Sports Center's Premier Duties membership fee policy to full council, and then we let them move it back down. There's a lot of questions, and I have my own questions here, but let me turn it over to you to give at least your initial thoughts from what's been done thus far.
Right, and so, as I mentioned last council meeting, there was never ever any clear direction, who is free, who is, and who to give it to. We have board members that are free, we want to give board members free, we have council members, wife free, just really no set guidelines, and that's kind of the reason I brought it up, because it's not a whole lot, but I gotta give the staff down there some kind of direction on, hey, who do we want to charge and who do we not want to charge? If you're on the planning commission 5 years ago, or mayor 30-something years ago, and I don't care either way, but that's lost revenue a little bit, and it's not a whole lot, but when you say no, my opinion is the military to keep it the way it is, active, it's for free. That's something, and that's really not it. There's really no guidelines on it. It's just kind of been willy-nilly, and it took us 2 years to get my hand wrapped around it, because I knew it was going to be kind of a sore subject with some folks, and it's not that I'm trying to get the money, I'm just trying to get staff direction on who to charge and who not to charge. If that makes sense.
I obviously have some questions that I'd like to ask them.
Sure.
If
Yeah.
I'm not following protocol, call me out because I'm a newbie again still, so,
Me too.
all right. I don't think we need to just have a discussion, correct?
I'm sorry, say that
We
again.
do not need a motion, just to have a discussion. We do?
I mean,
Mr. Chair, if you're asking, do we need a motion for you to ask questions of Mr. Cumberlander? I think the answer is no. If we're having discussion about the agenda item itself as a committee, then the answer would be yes.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. I would like to make a motion that we open this up for discussion.
Second.
Here, second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. We're now open for discussion. Thank you, Mr. Madden, for clarification. So I have my own questions, so feel free to begin. something that I think that, based on the conversations that we had here as a recreation committee and as we went into full council was, this idea of a lifetime membership. I think that's going to be one, it's not just like hard to implement, but it's also one of those things that I don't think that we need. I think we could perhaps do away with that. I did have a question for Mr. Reynolds. When we met last time, you asked about it being included in the fee schedule. I'm not 100% sure I followed what the question behind that was.
Right, so, Mr. Norwood, when we do our budgetary process, one of the things we've changed in the last couple of years is having the fees for the overall city come through the ordinance with the budget, so that there's a clear understanding of the revenue generated. That was the only question, because it would be different from what was recently adopted budget ordinance, because we're changing that. And I think that was a clarification that I just wanted to get from legal, making see the steps from that.
Thank you. Also, we had the mayor speak at the recreation committee meeting last month, and he brought up some good points about how we identify what is active military. I don't know if there is a clear-cut way to identify that unless we do something where you're getting a card of some kind to identify, and then they have to come back and then prove again. You got any thoughts on that?
Yes, the mayor, I made myself notes, and so I went and asked the staff, and I think this is true. They have to show an ID, and of them being active. That's how they determine if they're active or not.
So you have an active, so they show that every time they come in?
No, initially when they sign up. And then after their year, or they'll sign up just like anybody else, but when it runs out, they have to show that card again. So within that year, they could be out, and we do not check the ID every time they come in. But when they sign up initially, they'll sign up for a year or 6 months. When that runs out, we check their ID again, make sure they're active. It's kind of the honor system. So.
Right. Mr. Duncan, during the council meeting that we had, the full council meeting, it was brought up about whether or not for elected officials, this would be a tax issue. Have you had a chance to do any research into that?
I have not, but yeah, we're still got to figure that out, the tax issue.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes obviously said he's not a tax expert.
Right, so.
We wanted to pass that along, so if we could figure out what that answer is. It was also brought up about non-elected officials, whether or not commissioners, board members would also qualify. I don't know if this body has any thoughts on that.
I think that, we have a very difficult time getting people to serve in our boards and commissions. And, we don't offer a lot of benefits except for the Christmas dinner. And if we can say thank you by providing a benefit that will help them improve or at least maintain their health, and it does not cost the city overall in the grand scheme, I see no reason to take that away from it. But I would say that also only applies to those who are active board and commission members.
I would completely agree.
So would it be fair to say that if you are active employee, you're an active board, you're an active commissioner, you're an active elected official, we're cool with this. But if you're not, it doesn't apply.
We appreciate your service to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Matt. The last thing is that I wanted to bring up, and again, Mr. Matt, and Mr. Reynolds, and anyone else who'd like to comment, is what Mr. Hughes said about the ordinance, whether or not we need an ordinance. And if we make changes to this in any way, shape, or form, would we then need to have an ordinance? Or are we somewhat grandfathered in as elected officials with regards to the membership?
So just to make sure I understand, so the question is, if the current benefit that's in place, can it stay in place or does it need to go back before and have, so if it's not currently covered in the ordinance, I think you would want to make sure that the ordinance reflects the intention of what council, wants for its compensation, to include benefits. And so do you remember what it said? I don't recall. Last time council covered even the topic, it was over a decade ago. And I believe it was passed with a resolution instead of an ordinance. So it definitely is a benefit if it's something to be extended and included in the fringe benefits for council members. It would need to be included in a new ordinance at this point. Yeah, not to say, kind of going back to that, it's more of a legal question as to whether or not you can continue doing it, and that would be probably more appropriate for the city attorney.
I think that's another one thing we need to get answer on.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it's clear 57170 is clear that all, benefits require an ordinance. So that's clear. It's just whether or not you can continue doing it. That's more of a legal question because the current kind of de facto status wasn't adopted by ordinance more than a decade ago. So, yeah.
Mr. Matty, Mr. Riddles, do you have any other comments? Mr. Matty?
In looking at the 50% member discount, and we have it listed for retired military and veterans and their families. I think that, while we've got active duty at free, that we need to make sure that the gap that includes guard and reserve also falls with the retired and veterans and their families, because they're still serving even on a part-time basis. And I want to make sure that they're not neglected as a part of that. The other question I would have, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Putnam later, is how in the benefits package, we deal with insurance, because I don't know that I've ever actually seen the ordinance dealing with compensation. And I remember after I got elected, Ms. Miller asked, how I wanted that massive check every 2 weeks, and I said, "What check?" I didn't know that we got compensation when I got elected. So it might not be bad for us to actually see the ordinance that deals with that, how it deals with insurance, how it deals with actual pay, all of those zeros that continue to funnel into our bank account.
Were we able to find the actual ordinance?
There's an ordinance, but it's old. So
Yeah.
the newer thing is the resolution.
Okay, so we'll provide both. We'll provide the original ordinance, but then also kind of the current status of compensation was not done by ordinance. It was kind of done by not even a resolution. It was just a voice vote.
Basically, vote,
It was just a voice vote for a,
Because it
Yeah.
sounds to me like, we're only dealing with one piece of a much larger piece that probably, while should be discussed
Yeah.
in this committee from a recreation standpoint, would end up going over to finance and policy to handle that overall and overarching ordinance.
yes, sir. It definitely opened up a path that we were not expecting with the simple question of, can we receive this benefit? And so that's where it needs to be articulated in the form of an ordinance. An ordinance must be passed by council and cannot be implemented until the sitting of the next council at the next general election. So this is the year to do that if council intends to have it go into effect January 2024.
Mr. Dunn, if I
Yes, sir.
would, maybe if we could I could do the military. I think what Mr. Matt is saying is the employee and the council, I always thought it should go with human resources anyway, because that's the employee package. I'm kind of getting in the weeds with that, it's my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
And so is there a way we can move it to human resources and let Mark tackle that, or I don't mind tackling, I'm just.
I think where the real question, so there's a separate component for, so it's not employee and council, it's council alone. Council alone has a separate question. Where the appropriateness of this policy is, I think the policy as a whole belongs with this body, but there's specific pieces or elements to this that may be more appropriate in a different venue, based on what Councilmember Matthew said. And the, yeah. So pulling at this thread to examine one aspect of it led to a whole other issue that we have to deal with separately. So, yeah.
That's not to say that Fred didn't need.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
What I can appreciate about this is
Yeah.
trying to be concise and have everybody on the same page and their new policy to reflect on.
Mhm.
I think what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman, for the most part, active mayor, councilor, board, et cetera, military employee, everybody's fine with as it's currently done. 50% on active military, retired military, I think is what TAP was adding in there as well. And because currently we don't have a 50% discount for the retired military and veterans, is that correct?
Wanted to add guard and reserve in there because they're not covered in either one. You've got active under free, you have retired and veterans under 50, but there's no mention of guard or reserve. And I think that they need to be included in that as well.
I think it's half off, but you want to maybe just like the active military.
Well, they're not listed in any of the recommendations at all. There's no guard or reserve mentioned.
Mr. Matney, how would you feel about the state guard as well?
I would agree because they hold just as vital a function and sometimes are able to get in different kinds of money.
Yep. All right, we'll add them to the list.
And again, nothing was ever in place, so that's the reason I'm kind of, the feedback's good, because while I was on council so long ago, they come to my office and asking, I don't think I need to be making that decision. I don't think it's the city's money and so I tell them to make that decision.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Mr. Cumlander for bringing this to council's attention and to be able to put some policies in place to clarify what's happening at the sports center, I think is important. And then, again, the unintended consequence of us examining ourselves and what we're dealing with as an unintended consequence, I think is equally important because I don't think that there's anybody up here that wants to do anything wrong. I think we want to make sure that things are right and that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and it gives us an opportunity to examine that. So thank you, Mr. Cumlander, for bringing that to council's attention.
Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only other thing I'll add is that's what we're talking about, what you mentioned a minute ago was lifetime membership, retired employees, or elected officials or anything like that. It was mentioned that we're not currently doing that, or it is recommended that we have a retired employees of 20 years of criminal service, have to be a lifetime membership for free.
You're gonna correct me, but I believe what we're doing is currently it is wide open. Once you have left, you can still have that membership.
No, sir. If you retire, if I retire tomorrow, 30 plus years, I have to pay. Like me and you came up, and you kind of helped me with some of the dialogue with it. And, and that was just, again, that probably would come up under human resource because it's a benefit for the employee. That's just something that we added in, but there's nothing in place now.
But we do have 3 formerly elected officials who are not currently,
Correct.
who are receiving basically a lifetime benefit.
Correct.
So I think where I was going with that is in the event that we're even looking at a lifetime membership of any sort, probably shouldn't be free, it should likely be 50%. So, you know, as I look at this, everything that I would want to see needs to be active. People actively serving, actively on board, active employee, et cetera. If we want to go past that for a discounted membership or, you know, tenured employee of 10 years on, it's a 50% or something to that effect, I wouldn't have any problem with addressing that. But the little bit of concern I have is exactly the point of this coming up was for revenue. And if we continue to look at ways to decrease the revenue of the people we're trying to attract, our purpose if that pool gets so big and we're getting the pool half off. So
Right now, you got 156 military free, 186 employee, and all employees, military spouse, dependents of 3, employee spouse dependent, active are 19. Total active on council right now is 7. We have 3 mayors, that's probably 2 now, 1 is deceased, the rest of them, we'll bring that to 2.
Mr. Commander, Mr. Duncan, do you have any questions for this body? Any other questions?
The only other thing that I was thinking of as looking at this is, should there be any type of arrangement or consideration for in-city versus out-of-city from these groups? Obviously not the active free memberships for full-time employees, things like that, but the discounts, do we want to treat all memberships the same in-city, out-of-city, or has there any thought on that, ideas on that?
before bringing that up, that's one of the things I was sitting over on my hands about and trying to decide whether I'd say anything.
Yeah.
Part of me is trying to figure out who we're trying to serve here, the entire US military or the active military within our community. I would be much more in favor of every one of these being strictly people from our community. The sports center is funded in large part by general tax revenue, and so while I can appreciate an active military service who lives outside the city, at the same time, everybody in the city is paying for that. So just my general opinion, I would have the preference that active military, active employees, but these items speak from in-city personnel or in-city people anyway. Just my one vote opinion. Mr. Madden.
Well, and now we're going down another rabbit hole because we have in the past, and Mr. Cumberlander, correct me if I'm wrong, had marketing staff for the sports center that has gone to local businesses to sell membership packages to those local businesses. Now, while the employees of those businesses may be local, they may not be residents of the city of Mauldin. So then that begs your question again, who are we here to serve? We have our residential citizens, we have our corporate citizens. And when it comes to military, active or retired or reserve or guard, I just don't see people coming from extreme distances to come here just for a gym membership. I said several years ago that I didn't think that the city should be in the business of gym management, and advocated that we go with a private management company. We've not chosen to do so, and we're continuing to keep it in-house. And that's the decision of this council and previous councils and probably future councils. So I think that, now we do need to figure out exactly what it is that you're talking about and ask who we're going to serve. Because if we're going to continue offering packages to our corporate citizens, then they need to be treated favorably so that they're buying those memberships that help subsidize the sports center that's already a loss leader for the city that we're subsidizing to $250,000 a year. I think there are a lot of questions to answer as it relates to this. But I think that there are also some questions that Mr. Cumberlander is trying to get what we could call easy answers to for an incremental right now fix and continue improving upon that down the road.
Any other questions of us or of them?
I don't have it. No, sir.
And I think our goal tonight was just to receive feedback and draft something up from this and bring it back to the body next month.
So I need to close discussion, correct?
I think that would be appropriate.
I'd like to make a motion that we close discussion on this matter. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody say aye. Click on that item. Up next, we have the Sports Center membership fees. Mr. Conlater, would you like to start there, or should I?
You can, yes, sir.
I also talked to Mr. Duncan about Sports Center membership fees and was me and Mr. Conlater had talked about when the last time membership fees were raised, I believe it was over 5 years ago. And with everything going on with costs and competition, of course, obviously you're looking at different improvements, that it might be time to do a study to figure out, are we competitive? So I would like to make a motion that we open this one up for discussion as well. Like, I hear a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All ayes have it. We now for full discussion. I briefly did a look at our services as compared to the formerly known GHS YMCA, it's the Christmas YMCA now. And we're considerably more affordable than they are. And my thought was, if we haven't raised the fees in that amount of time, it's worth a look. But I'd like to just open up the floor and see if you have any other thoughts in terms of, if this is a lost leader, how can we make up some ground?
I think we made great strides. Born and raised here, it's hard to compare that building to any, just no building like that in the state. It's close, but it's nothing as nice as that building. I agree, we need to make money. We need to break it, it's pay for itself. And that's one of the reasons I kind of brought the other to y'all's attention. I think we made great strides. We've opened up on Friday nights in the past. The guys before me didn't do that. We closed it up 7 o'clock and we leave. We have staff out there at every event at the Culture Center House. We did have a marketing person a couple of years ago. We budgeted for it, got it. She does a great job trying to get out in the community. These businesses that are coming to town and trying to set memberships. I think we're making great strides. I'm with you about trying to get a little bit more money into there and maybe raise some rates, but I don't want to price ourselves out of the market as well. Some people still are COVID. We rebounded from that. We shut down, we got back up pretty quick. I don't sell that sports. It's a clean facility, one of the cleanest facilities I've been in. That's part of because of the staff and me. I'm a clean freak. And if you don't have a clean facility, you don't have good personnel at that front counter, you're not going to sell that place. And it's just going to keep on doing what it's doing. I think we made great strides for that. One of the strides is equipment. There's some people that have left because we don't have any equipment in there that aren't the latest and greatest. And so I think we got to make those strides. I mean, it's a tough pill to ask me, the council, say, hey, I need $400,000 or $500,000 more to make it go, and we're spending this much to keep it operating. I get it, I understand. This is a unique facility. I think we're doing great strides of selling it, and we can always get better. I think we're making great strides. 2.5 years I've been there. I think it's got a lot better. To answer your question, I hope that was before.
Anyone else have any comment or questions? Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, no, I would have no problem at least examining and seeing what else is out there. I think to Mr. Cumberlander's point, we're also competing against new facilities that are less than 10 years old, 5 years old, or whatever. So with that, you have newer equipment, safer, cleaner, faster, whatever it is people enjoy about workout equipment. So certainly look at it and bring it to council and see if it's something that makes some sense, especially as we're considering the investment in equipment.
I would agree. There's not an apples to apples comparison, really, when you think about it, because the services that we offer here are different than you're going to get at a place that operates 24 hours, versus a place that has classes. And the fact that we are a city-run facility. So, I mean, there's a lot of different variables there. I think part of it is trying to figure out, again, going back to equipment and things that we're looking at creating, what do we want this center to be? And I think in doing that is drawing some comparisons, looking at what is out there, what are we somewhat competing with? Again, it's not apples to apples, it's apples and oranges, but they're both fruit. So I would like for the city to kind of dig a little deeper and see if there's any opportunities there. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I was just gonna say, I think it's important for us to examine not just the pricing structure, but all the benefits and, the equipment and the whole 9 yards, and do a whole matrices that shows kind of like when you go online, you look at all these check boxes for different things and do something like that to give a very thorough analysis of what we offer at what price versus what others offer at what price, and see if we're below market and may need to look at what we can do for reinvestments and things like that. So absolutely.
There's no other comments. I'll make a motion to close the discussion. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Thank you, Bart, for all your time this evening. I know it took us a lot of your time.
It's all good.
But at the very end of this, what I like about this is when we talk about transparency in government, we just did, we had an open discussion about some key issues, and hopefully it was good feedback for you. Up next is public comment. Do we have any public comments? Hearing none, do we have any community? Oh, we do have one. Recognizing Ms. King.
Thank you very much.
If you wouldn't mind stating your full name and your address.
224 Devon Drive, Mauldin, Carroll King. I was making notes, and I typically don't get up and talk in this environment. Prior to us being in the courtroom, we were upstairs, and it was more of a laid back kind of atmosphere, and we would all generally chime in, and I think we've gotten away from that, and that might not be a good thing. But I wanted to make a couple of points real quick. Yes, thanks Bart for all of his hard work. My first term, 2016, 2020, I think, I was on recreation with Mr. Matney and the current mayor. And back then, probably early on, 2016, 17, one of our goals we talked about, and Mr. Cumberlander was not the director at that point in time, but looking at leasing versus buying equipment. And Mr. Matney would call it my soapbox, and yes, that's one of my soapbox issues, because, and I'm not speaking for the mayor, but we spoke about this recently. We were under the understanding for a long time that we were leasing equipment because that was a goal of council, only to find out that we were not. So that's my first point. I would urge your committee, Mr. Allgood, to look at both sides as you discussed tonight with Mr. Cumberlander. And I just think it makes good sense on some equipment to lease and roll it out to keep the most modern equipment around. I know we're more of a family type sports center / gym, but if you don't have adequate equipment, you're not going to get those members in. So, but it's all, I mean, one doesn't fit all, and I think there's equipment that we could, Bart is I'm talking about, that we could even add to our inventory. So that's my first suggestion and request. And then secondly, on the structure for the memberships, just don't lose focus of what Mr. Cumberlander and I think staff's asking to give them guidance and a policy perhaps that we've never had in place. I don't think it's that difficult if you look at the chart. there's no former council members who have free memberships. So it is kind of willy-nilly. I think those were the words used, and I think that's a valid statement. So we don't have to invent, that's the word, the wheel, but I think there does need to be policy procedures as you guys are working on. I would urge staff to work with Mr. Putnam on some of the other questions that came up about. I can answer those questions, but I'll spare you all the details. But the city's not technically paying the sports center for some of those memberships, so that leads to a question. It's not a paid benefit, it's just kind of given to you. So food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to committee concerns. Hearing none, what's your thought on adjournment? I hear a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it, we are adjourned at 7 o'clock. Up next is economic planning.
Which is fine. Right.
All right, calling EPD to order January 3rd, 7 p.m. First public comment period. Does anybody have anything they want to say? Do we have anybody online?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on to reading and approval of minutes. What do I hear?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 5th as submitted.
Motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Approved as submitted. Reports, communications from city officers, Mr. Charles.
Good evening, it's glad to be with you. I will say that when it comes to workout, the only dumbbell in my house is me, and all I do is 12 ounce curls. That's all I do. For a budgeting session, we have development, community
Ms.
development.
Miller, strike all that from.
I'm way ahead of you.
For community development budget review, we are at 65%, ideal was 51, so we're moving forward on that. And then cultural center side of that, we're at 69% of budget remaining. So again, well beyond the 51% minimum. Some news out of the community development department. We have a new staff that started today, Christopher Parker. He's been a long time participant in our theater program. He started today as our production coordinator, leading efforts out of the theater division. Christmas Carol that performed last month was under budget. We have some onesie twosies little things that come in, but we were under budget on that. 9% of budget remaining for that appointment. And we brought in $30,000 worth of revenue. So pretty good on that production. The next production up is Cats. And then the event side of the house is actually planning our events for the season. So that's a quick economic development report from our division.
Any questions for Mr. Charles? Hearing none, that moves us to unfinished business, of which we have none, which brings us to new business, right-of-way acquisition, Jenkins Street, Jenkins Court. Do I have a motion to allocate $345,000 from the fund balance to Jenkins Street and Jenkins Court right-of-way acquisitions?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
Moving this council, I think a map of what the, rough map of what that land looks like, what we're actually talking about. A little confusing until I saw the maps. We have that with that, that's all.
And I will say that as we move forward, if this item moves forward as the committee has moved, that there would be an executive session to address exactly the details that you're requesting.
Thank
Is there additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and forwarding that to full council. That brings us back to public comment. Is there public comment? Do we have anybody online?
No, sir.
We have committee concerns. Then what do I hear on adjournment?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned at 7:03.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just put it in the wrong section. Bunch of alcoholics over there. Yeah, and I think that there's actually a better graphic that has the shaded out portions that they'll be taking. So I'll find those and compile them all. Ah, okay. Gotcha. No problem.
Your name black, it's up there.
Oh, no.
We'll make sure that we'll have it all in there.
I thought I was gonna sit.
Because I see engineering drawings like that and I'm just as confused until I see what they shade out. Then I'm like, oh, it makes sense to me.
It depends on which one's taller.
So are you saying no taxable concern there?
Well, if it was a paid benefit, but it's
Right.
not a paid benefit.
Right.
So it's not, it's gray to me.
Well, the taxable side, I have no, yeah, whatever you say, I'm going to go with you. From the ethics standpoint, and the law, it just needs to be included in the ordinance. Yeah, that's all I was saying. Yeah.
That's what I was telling them. I said, that portion needs to be.
Yeah, that,
Mark.
right, yeah.
So Laura just needs guidance on, the fees are set,
Mhm.
right? How do I enforce the fees?
Yeah.
Who gets what?
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I got you.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Say it again. Purple Heart recipients.
But then you get into.
Yeah.
They don't check annually because I've been a member for however long it's been open and
Yeah.
I've never reviewed. It just keeps coming out of my account.
Ah,
So they.
huh,
So they
okay,
don't have to walk in and renew and show an ID.
yeah. Okay, interesting.
So that,
Well, I don't disagree with that idea of the Purple Heart thing, but I don't know how you prove that.
well, the whole thing is just.
Yeah. Okay. And I like what you said too, but we gotta talk about that later. Yeah. All right, sorry about that.
Call to order, Public Works Committee, January 3rd. It is 7:05 PM. I have here Carol King and Michael Reynolds. Okay, let's start out with public comments. Any public comments? That will move on to reading and approval of minutes. Right here.
Make a motion, the meeting minutes from December 5th be approved as submitted.
Have a motion, to a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let's have it. Sorry, was there any discussion? That's it. Reports, communications, to city officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, community members. As far as budget goes, street sanitation, and parks and sewer patrol, public works, little over 50% is supposed to be made this one year.
Oh, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
48 to 64%, so we're looking really good. A few items that we are hitting us on the budgets. Obviously, sanitation, landfill fees, and gas and oil expenditures are up. You expect more people, more houses, more trash, higher landfill fees. Obviously, the cost of diesel are up. We should, if we maintain this where we are right now, we should come in really close. But it's certainly expenditure that wasn't planned for, a little more than we expected. On that side, that we're really well.
Diesel was down for like a whole week and then went back up.
It was a good week. Other than that, the ARPA expenditures, for sewer rehabilitation, that work began today. If you remember, we had ARPA in year 1 and 2. I coupled both of those expenditures together in one big project. It's, we call it Basin 4. It's the old Mauldin, it's Hickory, Glendale neighborhood, we're relining the sewers down there. Total expenditure of $1.6 million. Beginning of the day, or we should see it probably finish out by summertime.
Questions for Mr. Coleman?
Oh, yes, but not right now.
Okay.
Okay.
I just have one question on this, was on the purchase of the additional vehicles, the leaf, any of those kind of equipment coming in yet? We're waiting on one more leaf. aren't we?
Yeah, we're on schedule.
No. I mean, last time you said we hadn't gotten one more coming.
No, so we still are waiting on, for Public Works, we have 2 sidearm trash trucks, which are gonna be the recycle trucks. We have a third sidearm that's gonna be the spare, well, probably gonna get on the road sooner than later, just to accommodate the growth that we're seeing. There's a dually that was out of, not last year, but the year before, capital budget for the sewer. And just with manufactured vehicles, it's just, I've been waiting 16 months now, so. But yeah, that would be the last of our vehicle purchases, and a leaf truck, yeah, so.
So the sewer relining, you anticipate the end of summer for that to be finished?
We set, so we set liquidated damages at a certain time frame, and that's when liquidated damages will start. But we anticipate it'll be done much sooner than that. We're working with Fraser, well, CHA Incorporated now. The subcontractor has been doing work for Metro and Simpsonville. Good group. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They're on top of it. We wrapped up the grant projects last month. Start to finish, that was 3 months, over 3 months. That was $850,000 work. So.
Well, and I think, going back to, just my personal point of view, I appreciate it's a massive investment in our infrastructure and appreciate your being involved, your knowledge, experience, all that. Because it is a huge expenditure, but needed and going to set the city sewer system ahead probably.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great investment. It's better than the potential fines and issues that come later.
Yeah.
That certainly the ARPA money came with a great price on it.
For our sewer system, it certainly did.
Yeah. The grants, the RIA grant that we worked through. I also have, I leveraged, we had $300,000 for rehabilitation in this budget cycle, and then I anticipate $300,000 in next year's budget cycle. I submitted a $4.3 million grant application to the last bit of the ARPA, so I should be hearing about that in about a month's time. So if we leverage that as our municipal match, we'll give another $4 million worth of work in our sewer system.
Well, I think again, just appreciate your looking at areas of the city that no one else sees, but very, very important.
Yeah, that's the last thing anyone wants to see, so.
Just get ready for cousin Eddie to come visit, right? Anything else? All right, GLDC partnership agreement.
Yes, so, back in July 2020, this came from business and development. There was a proposal from Mark III Properties, the DOT, the GTLDC, to rework the Standing Springs Ashford Bridge intersection. If you're familiar, this is the intersection that's on your left before you hit Bonnie Brae. It comes at a really awkward angle. If you're ever coming up Standing Springs, you can't see anything in your right, and they're all going 50 miles an hour. And so the developer really was looking at a way to improve that. It helps with, that's a lot of where our growth is, safety. City council agreed to fund $50,000. DOT is gonna signalize the intersection, and Mark III is gonna cover the remainder with C funds. And it's gonna be a 90-degree angle. In 2020, during the council meeting, city council stipulated that we would offer up to $50,000 at the time at which the C funds through GTLC were allocated. They put in, they got denied. They put in, they got denied. Third time around, they got approved. So, earlier this month, late last month, I got the invoice and the contract to move forward because the C funds had been allocated, and everyone's on board, and it's time for us to move forward. So this is for you guys as an information only. There's no action needs to be required. It was already voted on, agreed upon, and this is the plan. But we're gonna sign this contract and we're gonna move forward unless there's a last second change of plan. Yeah. All right, well then, we intend to move forward and meet our commitments to the project.
Is there anything on our end that was approved in that budget year? This is a whole different budget year, so we need to reestablish where this will come from.
It's already been appropriated and it's been encumbered. And so at this point, no action by council is needed because we've already spent the money. And now this is actually just stroking the check at this point.
So it's the transportation funds, budgeted, encumbered.
That'd be a great project to get finished. Terrifying, great.
All right.
Move on to unfinished business, there is none. A new business, the restroom facilities upgrade.
Yes. So, a little background, we have a lot of parks, we have a lot of bathrooms at these parks. Historically, the city used to leave the bathrooms open. Times where we have some janitorial staff in charge of the bathrooms, they lock them, they unlock them. The weekends they stay open. I guess we just live in a different world now, you just can't do that. Vandalism, vagrancies, it continues to happen. We had installed mag locks when we built the city center bathrooms. They're basically an electronic lock system. It's magnets. And so when I set the timers for them to open and close, the magnets will either turn off or turn on respectively. If you're inside and it happens on the button, you can press it, you can get out. And so because of the vagrancy, because of the vandalism, for the last, I would say, 6 months, we've been working with the police department, and the police department will go and lock them at night, and over the weekend, they'll lock them in the morning. We've run into a lot of issues with that because there is a lot of irregularity in what they do. They can't not go to a call because they gotta go open the restrooms. There's some diehard walkers at these parks, if the bathrooms are open at the right time, they will complain if they have. And so, this came up during a department head meeting, as a potential solution to alleviate some of the concerns of the police department. And also just, I guess, help minimize the vagrancy and vandalism in the bathrooms. So we looked up at perhaps getting the exact same system we had at City Park. We talked to our on-call engineer, electrician. They're like, hey, remember those locks? This is the company that does them in your area. The better you go with these guys than have us do it. It just so happens that the company is the same one that did the renovation of the lobby and also has done work in the public works facilities renovating our big doors. So, Public Works is asking for the invoice, not those quotations attached, a sum not to exceed $19,280 to install these electronic locking systems on all of the restrooms at all of the parks throughout the city.
We've got a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to send the full council recommendation of approval for locks to be installed on our commissioner facilities not to exceed $20,000.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
So, I've already been on one soapbox tonight. This just happens to be another soapbox of mine. I agree this is continue to be, problematic. I can remember Springfield Park having sinks pulled off the walls, toilets stopped up. So there's always been vandalism, but I think it's at a different height now, especially here at the Sports Center, the new, city center, rest area. So I guess I have more of a comment. I think the locks are an excellent solution to a problem. But to me, this is I can't think of the word, it's a team effort, but you have 3 departments involved, in my opinion. You have Public Works, Recreation, and Public Safety, Police Department. So obviously, I'm not on the grounds every day. I'm not here working from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or midnight when the water line breaks. But I would just encourage through Mr. Duncan that, not that you guys don't do this, but I think it needs to be a collaborative effort because nothing's foolproof. And I guess I have concerns that if someone, I just think the bathrooms need to be monitored, period, to get to the point. Not necessarily on a daily basis, but they need to be spot checked because I don't want a 12-year-old to walk into a bathroom and see something or a 7-year-old that I know have happened in the recent past.
Yes.
And that's just unacceptable. So to make that successful and to make that work, all 3 departments have to be on the same sheet of music. So I will challenge Mr. Duncan with that effort to make sure that hopefully everyone understands this is not a foolproof solution. It's moving forward and doing all that we can at the time, but I still think that PD needs, as public chair, the public works chair, public safety chair, I think that we need to have our police officers conscious of what goes on in our parks and when we're riding around in our low crime city, that they take note of that and do, just be on the lookout. So open the door, make sure that door's locked, make sure somebody hasn't, what's to say somebody can't push that button to get out and stick a carpet in there or a rock to keep it open and go back in 30 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I'm just,
That happened a month ago.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we came in and we opened them up and we clean them every day.
yeah,
And there was gratuitous nudity.
exactly. And that's what I refer to as a 7-year-old. So not, and
You keep that way for everybody.
yeah, seriously.
And the public works can only do so much, I understand, and sometimes it's difficult to get people to do things they don't want to do.
Well, and I understand, that's why I said it's a team effort and it involves, in my opinion, 3 different departments. So all members of council, I know, are proud to call this city our home, and I would hope that our city employees have the same pride or close to it. So I guess that's what I'm preaching. Just be proud of the city you work for and make it better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't ask before, I should have. You mentioned the electrical contractor was the one who mentioned this company. There'll be electrical modifications, I assume.
Yes.
Okay, that's not included in this.
Oh, no, there's power tributary to all of the restrooms. Okay. So the system works by basically, it takes the current, sends it to an electromagnet, and then there's a digital
display where you can set timers for it to cut on and cut off. Okay, so there would be no running of power, there would be no extra meters, it's using the existing power that's present, all of that. So
We were just running off 12 volts. So you would, like,
it's 100 power pole.
you know, saying the system, the internal systems all, one big goes to 12 volts, so if your power goes out, you mentioned there's a battery backup. Yeah, 12 volts not last a long time, and then the other point, I believe, if power does run out, say for a night, if battery does die, it should just kill the switch. So make it stop.
That's correct.
I'm just making sure you're covered on, if you have money in there for electrical, anything you would need for that. As well, there was somewhere in there was talking about needing a couple of new metal doors for one of the facilities. Is that included or do we need money for that as well?
Metal doors, we talking about. Hold up.
Yeah, doors. It's gonna say locked.
Oh, I got you, I'm sorry, under sunset part, it mentions important note, new hollow metal doors are needed for both men's and women's sections before the MAC locks are installed.
Right, and yeah, because they were, yes, and those were the same doors, those were the ones that we planned to replace for part of the, we've been changing out the door out there for the rock and everything.
No, that's great, I just wanted to make sure I didn't need to amend mine.
No,
I wish to make sure you have money covered.
we have that all covered.
Good. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
So only point, this is something I should bring up on Friday, which is our goal setting, is with security, with the Swamp Rabbit Trail, with all the additional places that we have to, monitor, that we need to probably start really looking at what can we do, what makes sense, with cameras, other systems, how can we look at things, right? We're gonna be responsible for additional property, and we're gonna make sure people are safe. That's something that we're
I mean, it's certainly something you guys should talk about and come up with a vision that you want for us, we want complete, thorough surveillance state of all of our parks and trails, and like, we're here to work your plan, just give us the plan.
And it's the coin toss, right? I don't want to be watched, but we want to keep people safe, and have fun,
Yeah.
Goldilocks spot, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Right, nothing else. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. We move on to public comment. Old man in the back.
You got it, sir.
You want my soapbox to stand on?
Terry Merritt, 214 Fairfield Drive, Mauldin, South Carolina. In referring to the park restroom facilities, I would ask that the following information be provided before we get to ordinance. Somebody called it earlier, rabbit hole?
Mr. Matney.
Okay, rabbit holes anyway. Park restroom facilities upgrade, was this part of the 2023 CIP budget? Two, does the cost exceed $15,000 that we send out 3 bids or get bids for these before we award a contract? 3, just an observation, when I used to visit all the fields, they had restrooms. And there were games going on where there were baseball, lacrosse, soccer, basketball. There was always recreation staff there. They also cut the lights out. To me, it's logical they could lock the restroom. Just some observations, I'd like to see questions answered before we just consider about the council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, what about the other public comment?
Yes. State your name and address.
What about the other public comment?
Oh, I was gonna get to that in just a second. I was making sure that nothing else.
No, sir, nobody else.
We received a public comment by, I believe by email, supported us, about, you probably stated better.
Yeah, so I brought it before the Public Works Committee before, and as you've been here long enough, we actually took it to city council one time. There's a townhome community called Bensbrook apartments on Miller Road. If you remember, the history of it is, there were some issues with needles and the trash cans. They were asked to bring their cans to the curb. They were asked to follow certain rules. They decided that it would just be easier to have a third party haul. And so for about a year, we have done no trash service out there whatsoever. And now we're getting requests from one particular individual who's no longer on the HOA, that we provide brush pickup and bulk item pickup for the townhomes. I brought up this before, and I explained in that community, the townhomes they don't own any of the land. So their townhome structures themselves have no vegetated area. All of the communal areas is an HOA. The HOA hires contractors to maintain the HOA. Therefore, every bit of the brush and leaves and limbs that they produce is contractor, which the city ordinance prohibits public works from taking them. This came before us before, you guys had no action on it because it's asking for a variance to the city ordinances. I don't think that it warrants it. That's just my recommendation, not the decision. Once again, that issue is reared its head. This gentleman who's speaking on behalf of the HOA, I reached out to the management company today. Hopefully I'll find out, get a response in the next couple of days. I don't believe he's on the HOA. I really want, before you guys even consider any variance to the ordinances, I would like for this to actually come from the HOA rather than a singular residence. I don't believe he necessarily speaks for the community. I just want to verify that. And then the other thing is just bulk item pickup. Same as before, we're not providing trash service. Why would we go give you a service that you're not providing? So that the bulk of his concern, and most of it was asking Mr. Chairman to provide certain written responses to his requests. As far as the comment goes, at this time, my recommendation would be to do nothing until we can verify for sure if this is an actual complaint from the HOA or just a singular individual. After that, if you guys do consider it, my recommendation is to adhere to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I saw the email come in at some point today. Obviously, I work a full-time job, so I did not get to read it in its entirety. But I do recall the history and would just like to go on record and say that a few months ago, or the last time that it was brought up, I don't think there was any comment by committee because it probably wasn't necessary because we already come to the conclusion that our ordinance does not allow what was being asked of us and discussed. So I did read enough to see that that was one of the concerns or questions why we didn't discuss it at that time. So I agree with Mr. Cleveland that as we decided a couple of years ago, or whenever it was, time goes by fast, that we adhere to the city ordinance.
I was gonna raise up after. The other thing that I mentioned to you, some of the stuff that was asked, we don't do for anybody, as far as building supplies and that type of stuff. And just comment if any, I mentioned in our neighborhood, people put stuff out. I know myself and other people who have trucks who have, in my case, when I have 4 things to go to town, I feel stupid taking it there. If I see something, I'll throw it in the back of the truck and go. People may think the city did it, and they don't. But I know a lot of, not just myself, but other people on trucks do the same. Maybe a good neighbor. So I'm sure we're here. Oh, they did it for me. Not necessarily. So on that, any other public comment?
Saying you're gonna start home.
No.
I just want to sure if that's.
On my way out the.
Just one quick thing, this is changing the topic, but being a new year, I think your guys are at times underappreciated. And I just wanted to go and let you know, and please share with them, I've stated this in the past, but it's just super nice when your guys come by in, the leaf truck, for example. And they're throwing their hand, not just to me, but they're just always so friendly and, they are that type of city employee that I was referring to earlier. They do have pride and, you know, I'm sure our new equipment doesn't help, doesn't hurt that you're able to try some new trucks. But, please just let them know that council does appreciate what they do day to day. It's not, a job that gets praised often, but they are greatly appreciated.
Well, I can tell you.
And
that
always super nice.
They certainly, some of them have been around here long enough.
They have.
And they see what it was and what it is, and it's a stark contrast. Heck, even the mayor started like it. But, I mean, you know, just with what you guys have allocated to the division, each division of the department as a whole, and materials, budgetary expenses, you know, rehab, the vehicles, they see it, and they, you know, they show up every day and they have a smile on their face. I mean, and then, matter of fact, I like to just throw this as one of the younger gentlemen, I don't know if he's the one who's throwing his hand, young man who's driving the leaf truck, probably not Steve.
You know who, yeah.
Steve.
That's always Steve, but the other guys are do too.
Yeah, there's a younger gentleman who's driving the leaf truck too. He actually started out of high school and he worked in the parks department. He trained in-house and got his CDL right before they changed the rules that no longer allows it. And he's worked his way up and now he's a driver of equipment. He loves it, loves it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the only point I can say about the leaves is that my 13-year-old son, even though I asked him to, did not get the leaves from the backyard out to the.
You gotta move, a few more months to get him out there before we stop running, so you'll be fine.
Laying out of many requests to do so. It's just, all right, that's it. Committee concerns?
I'm moving on to German.
Oh, all right, whatever you're in German.
Hey,
A second. Second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Like, opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. Good evening, everyone.
Can the leaf truck back up Jason's driveway?
Oh, dear.
We don't-
I could-
Violating city ordinances.
By the way, Steve came waving at you.